What if everything around you moved faster, but you couldn't feel it? Not the wind, not the clock, not even your breath. Earth already spins at over 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. A quiet, relentless motion beneath our feet. We don't sense it, but it's there, holding oceans in place, controlling night and day, defining the length of a heartbeat and a memory. But what if that spin doubled? What if Earth rotated not once every 24 hours, but every 12? Would the sky split faster? Would the seas rush louder? Would time itself feel thinner? This isn't just a question about speed. It's a question about balance, the invisible forces that cradle us, that shape the rhythm of life without asking for attention. And if we change that rhythm even slightly, the planet may not scream. It may simply shift. And in that shift, everything we know, gravity, light, sleep, breath, thought, could become unfamiliar. Not because Earth broke apart, but because we did. We live on a spinning world, a fact so ordinary we forget it. Every second, Earth turns beneath our feet at over 1,000 miles per hour. At the equator, the speed reaches nearly 1,670 kilometers per hour, faster than the sound that rolls across mountains or shatters glass in the sky. Yet we feel nothing. It is a stillness wrapped in motion, a movement so perfect, so smooth, that our bodies have come to ignore it. Time slips by, day becomes night, and the stars will overhead not because they move, but because we do, quietly, endlessly. Every 24 hours, the Earth completes its spin, and everything that clings to it, air, water, memory, cities, spins with it. That rotation sets the rhythm of life. It defines when we wake, when we rest, when plants bloom and tides rise. It shapes the shape of the planet itself, not quite a sphere, but a bulging, breathing body, stretched slightly outward at the waistline. That bulge is the mark of our planet's spin, a soft rebellion against gravity's pull. But what if that rhythm changed? What if Earth spun not once every 24 hours, but once every 12? What if the slow waltz became a frantic sprint? In the silence of space, Earth would become something new. Not because its core changed, not because its orbit shifted, but because its rotation, the gentle heartbeat of the planet, had doubled. From the surface, at first, it might seem thrilling. Days would be shorter, nights would rush in and vanish. Sunrise and sunset would happen twice as fast, painting the sky in briefer strokes, like a flame that flickers too quickly to warm the room. But beneath that spectacle, something deeper would stir. A faster spin means more angular momentum, and that momentum would push outward against gravity with greater force. At the equator, centrifugal acceleration would increase, and the planet would bulge even more, not in theory, but in shape. Imagine Earth as a balloon gently pressed from the sides. Now imagine that pressure doubled, straining the skin, deforming the balance. That's what a faster Earth would feel like. Not to the eye, but to the bones. Weight would change. Not everywhere, but in places closest to the equator, people would feel ever so slightly lighter. Not enough to float, but enough to feel off, as if the world were nudging you upward, ever so gently, as you walked. That subtle shift in gravity would ripple into architecture, athletics, biology. Buildings designed for one kind of weight would experience another. Muscles used to one resistance would find less. And over generations, the human body, which evolved for this exact spin, might begin to adapt to a different tempo. But Earth's spin doesn't just hold people. It holds oceans. And water doesn't negotiate. With more centrifugal force, the oceans would swell outward, pulled toward the equator like syrup flung from a spoon. Shorelines would rise in some regions and shrink in others. Low-lying islands near the tropics could drown, while polar seas might retreat. The equator would become a ring of excess, not fire, but flood. This isn't speculation. It's a war between forces. Gravity, which pulls in, and spin, which pushes out. As one grows stronger, the other weakens, and the shape of the world begins to sag. But it's not just the water that moves. The air, too, would begin to dance faster. Our atmosphere clings to Earth because of gravity, but it's also a fluid, a flowing, roiling blanket of pressure and motion. With a faster spin, winds would intensify, storm systems would change, jet streams, which guide global weather patterns, would shift their speed and trajectory. And what is weather if not the mood of the planet? A faster spin would stretch that mood thin, making hurricanes sharper, typhoons faster, and wind patterns less predictable. Some regions might dry out, others flood. Farming would become a gamble, and survival a test of timing. But not everything would wait for slow changes. Satellites, suspended above our planet in delicate orbits, rely on the timing of Earth's rotation. If that changes, so do their paths. GPS networks could fail. Communication systems might lose sync. The delicate ballet of machines around Earth would stumble, all because their silent partner started dancing too fast. And what about us? Our brains, our bodies, our sense of time is wired to Earth's 24-hour cycle. The circadian rhythm is not a suggestion. It's a biological contract, one signed by light and honored by every cell. Cut that day in half, and something fractures. Sleep becomes brief. Wakefulness blurs. Hormones stumble. Mental health declines. Civilization was built on time, from sundials to train stations to atomic clocks. And now time is different, but the mind doesn't adapt so quickly. The planet would keep spinning, but we might start to unravel. And perhaps the most haunting part isn't what changes, but what remains the same. The stars above, the vacuum beyond, the silence of space, they wouldn't notice a thing. Only Earth and those lucky or unlucky enough to call it home would feel the difference. A faster Earth is not a louder Earth. It is a quieter apocalypse. One that begins not with fire or ice, but with a hum, rising beneath our feet. And by the time we notice the rhythm has changed, we might already be out of step. It begins where you can't see, not in the sky or sea, but in the invisible, in the weight of your hands, the pressure of your feet against the floor, the way your breath feels when you stand still. Gravity is not a sensation we notice until it changes. But when Earth spins faster, it does change, not by a scream, but by a subtle lean toward the outer edge. Like standing on a carousel that's begun to pick up speed, slowly at first, then faster, until the force nudging outward becomes something undeniable. This outward push, this centrifugal whisper, resists gravity, especially near the equator. You wouldn't fly into the air, but you'd weigh less than you used to. Your bones would register it. Your blood, too, slightly more eager to rise. It's as if Earth were shrugging just enough to loosen its grip. And though it wouldn't be dramatic, this small shift would ripple. Not evenly. The effect would be stronger where the planet spins widest, along that invisible belt wrapping the globe's waist. The equator would swell, not just in theory, but in topography. Sea levels would creep upward there. Not because the ice melted, not because of heat, but because spin gathers water. It pulls the oceans like threads in a net, drawing them toward the center of momentum. In time, the seas begin to pile up around the equator, inch by inch, season by season, until the maps we knew start to blur. Coastal cities in tropical zones might disappear, not under waves, but under the slow sigh of redistribution. This isn't a storm surge. It's the planet gently resculpting its own skin. But oceans don't rise alone. Land, too, begins to shift, not sink but warp. The crust of the Earth, that brittle shell we pretend is stable, is always in motion, floating on a sea of molten intent. And when the rotation quickens, that shell strains. Mountains subtly lean, fault lines tighten, continents adjust their posture. The Earth is a body under stress, and faster spinning means a faster heart. And with each beat, the shape of the planet begins to lose its symmetry, just enough to matter. Above that shifting surface, the sky stirs. We imagine the atmosphere as still, but it's not. It clings to the Earth, yes, but it also moves with it, dragged along by friction and gravity and the inertia of being. When the planet spins faster, the air above it doesn't wait. It rushes. It races. The great jet streams that govern our weather systems, those invisible rivers of wind, begin to flow more violently. Storms sharpen. Cyclones spin tighter. The atmosphere, once a shield, becomes a restless ocean of its own. Wind no longer drifts, it slashes, and the delicate balance between temperature and pressure, between calm and chaos, begins to unravel. Regions that once knew gentle seasons might now know fury. The tropics, already wet and warm, could become violent. Deserts might become wind-swept wastelands, not of stillness, but of motion. And the poles, distant, frozen, ignored, might suffer their own unraveling. The planetary engine doesn't run cooler just because we spin faster. In fact, it might overheat. And in that overheated breath of the sky, the oceans below respond. Tides stretch, currents twist. The great conveyor belts of the sea deep, slow streams that carry warmth and memory across the globe, begin to bend. Just slightly, but enough. Because in systems as vast as oceans, a small nudge can become a transformation. The sea doesn't forget, carries change forward, and the waves come back stronger. But perhaps the most fragile thing caught in this acceleration is not the ocean or the air. It's us. We are creatures built by a slow earth, sculpted by its gravity, its rhythms, its balance. Our bodies grew upright under the current spin. Our blood pumps with a timing that matches the turn of the day. Our bones formed under a weight calibrated by this exact gravitational pull. And when the spin changes even slightly, the relationship we have with the ground, with standing, walking, leaping, falling, begins to shift. First, it might feel like dizziness. Not from motion, but from dissonance. The kind that happens when what your inner ear expects doesn't match what the world delivers. Then fatigue, muscles aching more quickly, joints protesting, bones adjusting to a force that is just different. Not enough to break, just enough to remind you that you're no longer in sync. And it goes deeper. Our organs, too, are shaped by this balance. The heart, for instance, pumps against gravity. A change in that gravity changes how it works. Blood pools differently. Oxygen moves more slowly or more quickly through the lungs. The brain, starved or flooded, begins to struggle. Cognition bends. Mood distorts. And over time, evolution might answer. But not quickly, and not kindly. Our biology, like our buildings, is calibrated to a planet that moves in 24-hour circles. A faster spin changes those circles, shortens them, warps the meaning of a day, and in that warping a memory might blur. Because what are we, if not patterns, shaped by light and dark, breath and pause, pressure and rest? And when the rhythm changes, we may still be alive, but we may no longer be human in the way we understand it. Somewhere in the middle of the atmosphere, a question rises not from the ground, but from the space between. What happens to breath when wind never rests? When the sky becomes a blur of motion, and the stillness we once knew is torn from above us? In a faster spinning world, there are no quiet skies. The clouds don't drift, they race. Jet streams, now recharged by the Earth's new pace, cut across the heavens like blades, carving new climates in places that once knew stability. Heat and cold no longer stay in their lanes. Everything spills. Desert winds find snow. Arctic chills seep into the tropics. And the air, which once carried pollen and birdsong, begins to carry something else. Chaos. We think of wind as a gentle thing. A breeze, a gust, a whisper on the back of your neck. But that's the illusion of a stable world. When the rotation quickens, the wind becomes a force of architecture. Buildings sway more. Towers tremble under gusts not planned for. Planes climb into headwinds that shouldn't be there. Every flight is a gamble. Every forecast becomes a story of untrustworthy futures. And on the ground, trees lean harder. Their roots ache. Their leaves shudder not with season, but with strain. Water joins the rhythm. Ocean tides, which respond to the pull of the moon, now also respond more fiercely to the speed of the Earth's turn. Not just higher tides at the equator, but faster ones. The intervals between high and low shorten. The transition sharpens. Currents speed up, collide, and in doing so, they mix waters that were never meant to meet. Nutrients shift. Marine ecosystems, delicate, temperature-bound, begin to fracture. Fish no longer migrate on cue. Coral dies not from heat, but from confusion. The deep ocean, once quiet, churns. Above the oceans, the winds now carry storms that form faster, grow sharper, and move with less warning. Hurricanes don't wander, they streak. Supercells don't linger, they detonate. The energy of the earth, once spun gently outward, now rushes ahead of itself. Lightning grows more frequent. Rain falls in sheets, not drizzles. Floods come to cities that once sat comfortably above sea level. In this new rhythm, nature doesn't just speed up, it lashes out. And humans, still stubborn in their construction, still anchored in the cities they built for another version of the planet, find themselves vulnerable not because of size, but because of time. There is no longer enough of it. Warnings come too late. Evacuations stall. The window between knowledge and disaster closes. What was once a cycle becomes a surprise. Yet the greatest threat in this faster world may not be the elements, but the clock. Our internal clock, the circadian rhythm, evolved for 24 hours. It is not a habit. It is chemistry. Every hormone in your body, every rise and fall of alertness, appetite, immune function, emotion, all of it obeys the invisible drumbeat of the planet's rotation. Shift that beat, and the music breaks. A 12-hour day means 6 hours of light, 6 hours of dark. Then again, and again, and again. For some, it might seem like more life per day, more sunrises, more sunsets. But to the human body, it is dissonance. The eyes can't adjust in time. The brain doesn't know when to sleep. Melatonin spikes at the wrong hour. Cortisol creeps in before it's needed. The body becomes confused, and confusion is exhausting. Shift workers, astronauts, polar researchers, they live through fragments of this disorientation. But even they retreat eventually, to a place where the rhythm returns. In a faster world, there is no return, no recovery, only adaptation. And adaptation, when forced, always comes at a cost. Children might grow up in this world not knowing anything different, but they would be different. Their attention spans may shorten, their tempers sharpen, their growth patterns shift. They may sleep in bursts, not cycles, eat on no schedule, age sooner, live lives more compressed, more fractured, not because they choose to, but because Earth no longer allows otherwise. Civilizations that once aligned themselves with the sun would drift. Calendars would mutate. Clocks would become ceremonial relics of a slower Earth. Time itself, once a shared fiction, becomes a broken mirror, and in that shattered reflection, culture stutters. Language might evolve to match the new pace. Shorter phrases, fewer tenses, fewer words for rest, more for rush. Myth would shift too. Stories of gods and beasts that run too fast, that burn out. A new creation myth, perhaps not of 7 days but of 7 minutes. Faith becomes breathless. History becomes harder to hold. And through it all, the earth spins. Not malevolent, not kind, just faster. It does not apologize for the weight we lose. It does not explain the time we forget. It does not slow when the oceans rise or when our skin begins to break under sun and wind. It just turns, as if trying to outrun something, or toward something we were never meant to see. Because maybe, deep down, the planet was never meant to move this fast. And neither were we. Somewhere between morning and night we used to live. A slow turning, a gentle division. 12 hours of light, 12 of dark. It wasn't perfect. Clouds interrupted, seasons stretched. But it was enough. Enough for roots to rise, for wings to migrate, for thought to unspool across the quiet plains of time. Light came in like a tide, rose warm across windows, lingered on skin. Then it left, and in that leaving, rest took its place. The rhythm was never questioned, because the rhythm was the planet itself. But when Earth spins faster, the day is sliced. What once felt like a wave becomes a blade. The sun doesn't arc. It flashes, comes too quickly, and leaves too soon. Day becomes a kind of interruption and night an aftershock. 6 hours of light, 6 of dark, then again, then again. In this new cycle, the sun rises twice before most people finish a meal. Shadows stretch, snap back, return. Sleep is something we try to schedule, but the world no longer agrees. And so we begin to drift. Circadian rhythms, once the metronome of life, begin to fracture. Every living thing on Earth has some version of this clock. Bacteria, trees, cats, humans. It's not just about sleep. It's the choreography of hormones, body temperature, hunger, memory, immune response, healing. These processes are not guided by reason. They are entrained by light. And when light comes too fast, or too short, the orchestra begins to fall out of tune. For plants, the impact comes first in silence. Photosynthesis is not optional. It is survival. Light is food. And with only 6 hours to feed before darkness falls, the energy budget grows tight. Some species adapt. Some stall. Others fail. Crops bred for long summer days might grow an inch, then stop. Not because the sun is weaker, but because it isn't there long enough. Forests stretch upward in confusion. Trees flower at the wrong time. Some never do. Pollination misses its cue. Insects arrive too late or too early. Whole ecosystems, once locked in a slow waltz, begin to miss their steps. Migrating animals feel the fracture next. Birds guided by stars find that their internal clocks no longer align with the journey. The landmarks still stand. The rivers still flow. But time itself has changed. The sky no longer moves the way it did. And so they wander. Some too early, some too late. Eggs are laid in snow. Chicks hatch into famine. Whales that once sang across oceans lose their timing. The great clockwork of instinct begins to shudder. Even insects, the smallest, oldest architects of balance, begin to fall out of sync. Bees forget which flowers bloom when. Fireflies blink into the wrong dusk. Moths spiral into light that now pierces too sharply and ends too soon. And still, the humans wait for understanding. But it does not arrive gently. We are creatures of time. Our cultures are built around it. We wear it on our wrists. We teach it to children. We measure it, trade it, fear it. Religion, politics, love, all of it shaped by when. Our words for seasons, meals, greetings, they assume a world that spins just so. A day that is long enough to think and short enough to rest. But when that day is halved, when the sun burns through too quickly and the moon arrives before we're ready, the meanings unravel. Imagine waking to dawn, drinking coffee, and watching the sun fall again before you've had time to change clothes. Imagine offices that open in the dark and close in light. Children walking to school at noon and walking home in stars. The calendar remains the same, but the day fractures. Time, as we know it, no longer maps to the way the world moves. And the mind suffers first. Sleep, once a nightly surrender, becomes a struggle against the clock. Melatonin release no longer lines up with darkness. Cortisol spikes too soon. People lie awake not out of anxiety, but dissonance. They sleep in fragments, wake in fragments, dream without ending, wake without rest. Memory shortens, focus erodes, emotion grows erratic. Depression rises not from pain but from distortion. The body cannot find its place in the new tempo, and the mind, deprived of anchor, begins to drift. Work changes, productivity shrinks. Not because of laziness, but because humans were never meant to run on a 12-hour spin. Attention spans shorten. Accidents increase. Machines calibrated to old patterns begin to mismatch with new behaviors. And slowly, the economy falters, not from lack of resource, but from the loss of rhythm. Culture starts to spiral. Songs written for sunsets now feel rushed. Movies must be watched in halves. Language bends. New words emerge for sleep broken into pieces, for mornings that happen twice, for days that feel like flickers. Religion may change, too. Myths reshaped. Gods that once governed the sun now battle to keep pace. Rituals meant to align with solstice or equinox no longer feel grounded. The Sabbath rushes in and out before breath can slow. Prayer becomes quicker. Faith becomes stretched. Time, once divine, now feels mechanical, relentless, and offbeat. And somewhere, buried in all of this, is the question of consciousness itself. If our sense of reality is built on the rhythm of days and nights, then when that rhythm is broken, does our sense of reality break with it? Do we begin to dream more than we live? Do we feel that something essential has slipped, not in space but in spirit? Perhaps we would try to fix it. Build underground cities with artificial light. Construct chronobiological bunkers, where days are held artificially at 24 hours. The wealthy may retreat into domes of constant dusk. The poor may live under flickering skies, never knowing if it's day or night. A planet divided not by wealth, but by access to time. Or perhaps we adjust, generation after generation, until this rhythm, 6 hours of light, 6 of dark, becomes the new heartbeat of the species. People grow smaller, sleep differently, think in new patterns. A different kind of human may emerge, one not shaped by the slow-turning Earth we once knew, but by a faster, more fragmented planet. They might look back at us, if they even remember, and wonder how we survived so slowly, how we waited 12 whole hours for night, how we dreamed only once a day. And in that wondering, perhaps they feel what we feel now. That time is not fixed. It is not a straight line. It is a breath. And when that breath quickens, everything we are begins to blur. The Earth is round, we say, a sphere, smooth and spinning, perfect in its balance. But that's only mostly true. Already, Earth is a little wider at the equator, a quiet swelling caused by its spin. Like a dancer whose skirt lifts slightly with every turn, our planet carries its rotation in its shape. We don't feel it, but it's there. A slight flattening at the poles, a gentle bulge at the belly, and it holds until it doesn't, because gravity, the soft, constant hand that keeps us here, is not a promise. It's a negotiation, a delicate argument between mass and motion, and when that motion accelerates, the argument starts to break. If Earth were to spin twice as fast, the equator would swell more, not because anything pushes it outward, but because gravity pulls a little less. Not everywhere, just there, along that invisible line where the centrifugal force grows strongest. At first, it would feel like a slight lightness, a step that lands too softly, a thrown ball that curves just a little too far. But as the spin increases, so does the protest of matter. The Earth tries to hold itself together and begins to lose. The crust stretches, not breaks, not yet, but strains, pulls outward while the poles settle deeper. Mountains along the equator may sink, not into the ground, but into space. If only slightly, their peaks a few centimeters farther from the planet's core than they were the year before. The oceans, already eager to gather at the middle, push farther outward. Coastlines shift, not just inland, but upward, tilting as if drawn toward the horizon. From space, Earth would start to look strange. Less like a globe, more like a drop of water caught mid-spin. An oblate spheroid, yes, but exaggerated. Like a balloon being squeezed from top and bottom, its center thickening. And in that thickening, the laws begin to bend. Because gravity doesn't forgive acceleration. At a certain point, it yields. If Earth spins fast enough, the outward push at the equator becomes strong enough to cancel the pull of gravity there. Not everywhere, just on the edge. Just at that perfect balance point where down becomes optional. At that point, the ground no longer holds you. You are not lifted. You are simply not anchored. It wouldn't happen all at once. Not to everyone. But grains of dust might take longer to settle. A feather might drift too far. And one day something heavier, a pebble, a stone, tossed just right, might never come back down. We call that escape velocity. The speed something must reach to leave Earth's gravity behind. But here, at the edge of spin, velocity becomes a gift Earth gives away on its own. Not by throwing objects faster, but by holding them less tightly. And the sky, once a gentle threshold, begins to fold closer. The line between atmosphere and space is not sharp. It blurs. thins, and now it lowers. At the equator, the air stretches thinner, pulled outward, spread across a larger curve. Clouds form lower. Planes fly heavier. The blue of the sky fades faster. You could be standing on what we still call Earth and find yourself, by some definitions, already in space. Gravity becomes regional, uneven. At the poles, it holds strong. At the equator, it falters. Standing in one place, you weigh more than you would 5,000 miles away. You can feel it. So can your bones. And not everything stays obedient. Mountains of water swirl toward the bulge. Rivers slow or reverse. Lava, deep beneath the crust, flows more eagerly toward the surface in regions where the planet no longer clutches it tightly. Volcanoes that have slept for centuries might find their breath again. And what they exhale may not be fire, but memory. Because the Earth remembers what balance felt like. Tries to recreate it, but it can't. Not when it's moving too fast to hold on to itself. And then comes the silence. Not of destruction, not yet, but of lightness. A strange quiet across the equator, where the pressure is gone, where everything that once rested heavily now trembles. Buildings there begin to crack, not from earthquakes, but from tension. Their foundations press against a ground that's no longer sure it wants to stay. Satellites launched from equatorial regions find escape easier. Debris from past launches doesn't fall back. And humans, once curious, now feel it in their skin. Heartbeats that race not from fear, but from dislocation. Lungs that can't quite grip the thinning air. Eyes that see too far, not because vision sharpens, but because the haze above is gone. And someone somewhere throws a ball too high, and it doesn't come down. And that's the moment the world understands. Earth is letting go. It's not a cataclysm, not yet, but it's a warning. Because if the spin continues even just a little more, the balance collapses. The equator becomes a launch pad. The crust begins to lift. Landmasses crack not from pressure, but from relief, as if the ground itself is sighing in surrender. And in time, pieces of the planet might rise and not return. Dust, soil, water, maybe more. Earth, unable to hold its shape, begins to fragment, not explode, not shatter, but loosen, like a body that's spun too long, too fast, and begins to unweave. And the question isn't whether it will fall apart. It's whether anything will remain once it has. Because the Earth we know is not just a place. It's a pace. And once that pace is broken, what's left may no longer be called home. Above us, the sky has always seemed steady. A ceiling, a shield, a constant canvas of blue. We look up and see clouds, the trail of planes, the slow drift of stars as night falls. But that stillness is only an illusion, because above that fragile calm lies a machine, vast, humming, invisible, made of fields, particles, orbits, and memory. Our satellites, hundreds, then thousands, encircle Earth in careful loops. A chorus of function. GPS, communications, weather tracking, military eyes, scientific ears. They don't float. They fall forever in controlled paths, wrapped around the Earth like threads spun by reason. Each one calculated to the planet's shape, its mass, and most crucially, its speed. But when Earth spins faster, that delicate balance frays. The gravity at the equator weakens, while centrifugal force pulls harder outward. The ground changes shape, the atmosphere stretches, and suddenly the numbers don't add up anymore. Orbits shift, slowly at first, then rapidly. Trajectories skew. Some satellites drift higher where they grow blind. Others sink lower, scraping the upper atmosphere, pulled into heat they weren't built to withstand. And then, one by one, they begin to fall. A GPS satellite goes dark. Not in a blaze, but in silence. This data feed stutters, then stops. Somewhere on the surface, a plane veers slightly off course. A ship waits longer to dock. A soldier walks a few steps too far. A phone can't locate itself. Navigation becomes guesswork. Traffic lights desynchronize. Weather forecasts lose fidelity. Not because we lack the knowledge, but because the tools we sent skyward can no longer see clearly. They were built for a slower Earth. The The sky, once a map, becomes a ghost. And beneath that failing web, something deeper begins to slip. Earth's magnetic field, that ancient, silent force, is not fixed. It dances, swirls, reverses over millennia, generated by molten iron spinning in the planet's core. It wraps around us like an unseen shell, deflecting cosmic radiation, shielding us from solar fury. Life as we know it, from our DNA to the circuits in our machines, exists because of it. But that dynamo depends, in part, on the balance of motion. When Earth spins faster, the core, solid and molten, responds. Turbulent flows shift. Patterns of convection distort. And with it, the magnetic field begins to warp. First, it weakens. Not catastrophically, not at once. But just enough. Enough for more radiation to leak through. Enough for the atmosphere to feel the sting of solar wind. Enough for the high skies to begin peeling. The magnetosphere, once taut and wide, becomes lopsided. It buckles on the sun-facing side. On the dark side, it stretches thin. The Van Allen belts twist. Charged particles find paths they shouldn't. Auroras bloom in strange places, not as beauty, but as warnings. The atmosphere, our breath, our blanket, doesn't scream. It recedes. Slowly. Layer by layer. The thermosphere cools. The mesosphere contracts. The ionosphere dances with static. Satellite signals begin to scatter. Radio waves grow unreliable. Communication falters. The sky begins to whisper in static. And then comes the sunlight. Not brighter, sharper. Because without a full shield, ultraviolet radiation slices through more directly. The ozone, already fragile, begins to erode. UVB, UVC, the rays we never evolved to see, now reach deeper. Not just the skin, the eyes, the blood. Mutation rises. Skin cancers spike. Immunity weakens. Crops wilt not from lack of water, but from the sharpness of light. Animals retreat into burrows. Birds go blind. Insects disappear, and with them the pollination cycle begins to fray. The blue of the sky begins to pale. Not gone entirely, but thinner, like fabric pulled too tight. The scattering of light that makes our world familiar becomes weak. Noon feels like standing under a magnifying glass. Even clouds, once comforting, grow translucent in the overexposure. The sun doesn't just rise, it pierces. And for those who live in high altitudes, or equatorial zones where the centrifugal force now distorts gravity most, it feels like the planet is pushing them upward and burning them in the process. Our ancestors once feared the wrath of the heavens, fire from above, punishment from gods. But here there is no God, just math out of breath. Scientists race to adjust their models. Shields are proposed, orbiting mirrors to deflect solar radiation. Ground-level bunkers with artificial skies. The rich buy time underground. The poor learn to walk at night. The calendar loses meaning. Days too fast, nights too bright. And the skies, those skies we once trusted, become a frontier of risk. Children are taught not to stare at the sun. Not just because it blinds, but because it now scars. Schools issue UV-resistant uniforms. Outdoor time is rationed. Sunscreen becomes a currency. Sunglasses a second skin. And still, it isn't enough. What Earth is experiencing is not war, not weather, not even climate. It is unraveling. A system whose pieces, magnetic, atmospheric, orbital, were woven slowly over billions of years, now tugs at its seams. Because the Earth never asked to move faster. And yet, something perhaps in us, perhaps in the randomness of cosmic push and pull, set it spinning beyond what it was made for. And the sky, that soft silence above us, begins to sound different. Less like wind, more like warning. Somewhere between dusk and dawn, where the sky forgets its color, something begins to bend. It isn't the Earth, not entirely. And it isn't time, though it no longer behaves the way it used to. It's rhythm. The quiet, invisible loop that once wrapped every life in a pattern of rest and return. The loop is thinning, unraveling, and no one seems to notice until it's already gone. When the Earth spins faster, day and night arrive not as invitations but as interruptions. The The sun rises before sleep is finished. It sets before the day has spoken. We find ourselves in a loop we can no longer hold. 6 hours of light, 6 hours of dark, and then again, no rest between, no transition, no pause, just a blur of beginnings. First, we adapt. Humans are good at that. We build schedules, artificial lights, new calendars. We take pills to sleep, alarms to wake, and carry the illusion of control like a flame in the wind. But the wind does not stop, and control here is as fleeting as the shadows at midday. Midnight no longer feels like the middle. Noon is too brief to warm the skin. Time feels like it's breathing faster than we can. We age in pulses. We remember less, not because memory fades, but because memory needs rest. And there is no more rest, only intervals. The stars begin to shift, not in position, but in meaning. Sailors no longer trust them. Farmers stop watching them. Children look up and feel nothing. The constellations remain, but the silence they once echoed has been filled with something sharper. The sound of everything happening too soon. Birds stop migrating, not all at once, but gradually. Some leave and never return. Others never leave at all. The sky is no longer a map. It's a blur, and wings, once sure, now flutter without destination. The great rhythms of the planet, the ones we never wrote, only followed, begin to dissolve. And in cities, the artificial loop tightens. Neon replaces the moon. Nights are painted over with noise. Work becomes a cycle of tasks with no anchor. Days blur together not from fatigue but from acceleration. There is no Friday, no weekend, no sense of after. Only the now and the next now tumbling forward. Sleep becomes something people purchase, not just mattresses or rooms. Entire companies rise to offer timing correction, selling you 8 uninterrupted hours inside a bunker where clocks are slower and the sun never touches the wall. But when you step outside, the loop catches you again. And it does not slow to let you in gently. The elderly grow confused, not by age but by tempo. They speak of mornings that lasted, of sunsets that lingered, of meals that meant something. The young don't understand. They live in bursts. They blink and grow older. They wake and something is gone. And then the tides change. Not from the moon, though it tries to keep its pull steady, but from the ocean's own exhaustion. The earth spins, dragging the waters faster than the moon can guide, tears at the coasts. Waves come sooner, higher. Shorelines buckle. Islands vanish not in storm, but in churn. And still the sky turns. We try to measure it, to understand. The graphs curve sharply. The data is clean. The interpretations aren't. Physicists begin to speak in metaphors. That time is no longer a river but a storm drain. That Earth, spinning faster than it should, is dragging spacetime with it like a whirlpool tearing the edge of a lake. That causality, once thought to be unbreakable, is fraying. Experiments in particle labs begin to yield strange delays. Signals arriving before they're sent. Decay processes no longer matching their clocks. Somewhere, buried in equations, the word retrocausality appears. Not as certainty but as whisper. The loop, it seems, is not just speeding up. It is bending, folding, wrapping back on itself. And in this folding, questions begin to echo. Did we choose this? Did we cause it? Or have we been here before? The thought creeps slowly, that maybe this isn't new. That Earth, this blue, flickering sphere, has spun too fast before. That time collapsed. That rhythm broke. That memory reset. And what we are living is not a crisis, but a return. Some look to myths for answers. Floods, eternal nights, days of fire. Perhaps they were not symbolic. Perhaps they were echoes. Perhaps we have always danced this loop. Built civilizations under skies that spun too fast. Watched them fall. Watched memory itself unravel. And each time we forgot. Not because the knowledge was lost, but because there was no time left to hold it. And now, standing at the edge of another loop, another dusk, another morning that won't wait, we must ask, What happens when a planet moves faster than the minds it creates? What happens when time outpaces thought? When motion outlives memory? And when the sky, once our story, becomes our erasure? Somewhere, perhaps right now, someone looks up. They see the stars. They feel the wind. They hear the silence between clock ticks. And in that silence, they wonder if this moment has happened before, and if it will ever stop happening again. So the next time you stand still and feel nothing beneath your feet, remember, it's only because Earth spins so perfectly you forget it's moving at all. But double that spin, and stillness shatters. Gravity loosens, days splinter, the sky thins, and the world, the only one we've ever known, begins to whisper in unfamiliar ways. This isn't a story about disaster. It's a reminder that balance is not silence. It's a song the earth hums beneath everything. Rhythm not of sound, but of spin. And when that rhythm quickens, even slightly, the notes go sharp. The harmony breaks, and everything that once felt eternal begins to sway. Not with a scream, but with a question. What is a day? What is a sky? And if time itself begins to tremble, would we even know what it means to stand still? Again?